An hour before she was supposed to say, "I do," she stared into the mirror and felt her world shatter. Her white gown felt heavy in her hands. Her phone buzzed with a message she never expected. The man she loved had been lying all along. But what she chose to do next, that decision would haunt an entire town for years. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Julia had always believed in the storybook romance. When she met Mark, he seemed perfect. Charming laugh, steady job, family values. She never suspected that behind the easy smiles was something darker. 3 weeks before their wedding, an old college friend messaged Julia a screenshot of text messages between Mark and someone named Lena. Julia stared at the screen, heart pounding. At first, denial flooded her. Must be a prank, she told herself. But as she dug deeper, more clues surfaced. Hotel receipts, side conversations, and a ghost of a life she didn't know she was marrying. On the morning of her wedding, Julia sat alone in her room, mascara running, clutching her phone. She rehearsed walking down the aisle, but the ring felt wrong on her finger. The whispers started. Bridesmaids gasped, guests murmured. She could almost hear her own pulse echoing in the chapel. Mark appeared in the doorway, bright smile frozen when he saw her face. She couldn't speak. In silence she stood, took a shaky breath, and made a choice that no one saw coming. Amara Williams was 32, the kind of woman who never stopped believing in second chances. Born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, she built her life from the ground up. Her mother, Lorraine, a retired schoolteacher battling chronic illness, had taught her that love and hard work could heal anything. After years of disappointments and heartbreak, Amara had finally found someone who made her believe again. Ethan Carter. He was 35, tall, confident, the kind of man who carried himself with quiet assurance. To everyone around them, Ethan looked like the dream, the man every woman prayed for. Amara often said he was her answered prayer. Together, they planned the wedding she had always imagined, an intimate ceremony at a countryside venue surrounded by oak trees and soft candlelight. Every petal, every color, every song had meaning. This wasn't just a wedding, it was the culmination of her sacrifices, her hopes, her faith in love. She had poured her entire savings into it, every cent she had, because for Amara, this wasn't just a day. It was a promise that life could finally go right. But beneath her glowing smile and perfectly organized checklist, there were quiet worries she tried to ignore. Ethan had been distant lately. Late-night messages he dismissed as business. Phone calls he'd step outside to take. He'd change the subject whenever the conversation turned serious, like where they'd live after the wedding, or how he felt about becoming a father. Yes, a father. Amara was 4 months pregnant, a secret only her mother and best friend Danielle knew. She wanted to announce it on their wedding night, in front of their families, as a symbol of new beginnings. But in quiet moments, when Ethan's phone buzzed and he smiled faintly before slipping it into his pocket, a small, cold doubt crept into her heart. Still, she silenced it. After all, wasn't this what love meant? Trusting, even when it scared you. Danielle, however, saw what Amara didn't want to see. "He's hiding something," she whispered one afternoon, helping Amara choose her final dress fittings. "I've seen that look before, Mara, that half-truth smile." But Amara laughed it off, brushing it aside with a gentle touch. "You worry too much," she said. "Ethan's just under pressure from work." Still, a flicker of unease crossed her eyes as she adjusted her veil in the mirror. The venue was booked, the guests invited, the countdown ticking toward forever. But what Amara didn't know was that someone close to her already knew Ethan's secret. And the truth was about to surface in a way she never imagined. As the wedding day drew closer, the atmosphere around Amara began to shift in ways she couldn't quite explain. Ethan had always been affectionate, but lately, his warmth had turned into distance. Texts went unanswered for hours. Phone calls were shorter, and his usual good morning messages had disappeared altogether. He blamed stress. "Just too much on my plate, babe." But his tone carried something colder, more detached. At first, Amara believed him, but when the florist called to ask why Ethan hadn't paid the remaining balance, her stomach twisted. The caterer echoed the same complaint. She brushed it off with nervous laughter, transferring funds from her own account to cover the gaps. He must have forgotten, she told herself. But deep down, something didn't sit right. 2 nights before the wedding, while tidying the guest room where Ethan had been staying to avoid bad luck, she found a small white envelope tucked beneath a pile of his receipts. Inside was a folded slip from a jewelry store, not the one where they bought their wedding bands. The date was recent. The purchase, a diamond bracelet engraved with the words, "Forever, my love." The handwriting on the receipt wasn't hers. Her breath caught. The air around her thickened. 1,000 questions raced through her mind, but her body refused to move. She placed the receipt back exactly where she found it, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. Her best friend, Tasha, noticed the subtle cracks in Amara's voice when she called that evening. "Girl, you sound off. What's going on?" Amara tried to sound casual, but Tasha knew her too well. Tasha had always been outspoken, fierce, loyal, and unapologetically honest. She had never fully trusted Ethan, not since the day he avoided eye contact when Amara introduced her as "my sister from another mother." Tasha had seen that look before, polite, restrained, a man hiding something behind charm. So while Amara planned seating charts and double-checked floral arrangements, Tasha quietly began her own investigation. She started with Ethan's social media, his tagged photos, old posts, and friend lists. What she found made her uneasy. A woman named Rachel, recently liking every one of Ethan's pictures, her comments a little too personal to be harmless. Meanwhile, Ethan's mother, Evelyn Carter, added to the growing unease. A woman of quiet judgment and sharper words, she made no effort to hide her disapproval. "You're different from what I expected," she said one afternoon, eyes narrowing over her teacup. Amara smiled politely, pretending not to notice the disdain hiding behind Evelyn's compliments. "Ethan tends to make rash decisions when he's emotional," Evelyn added softly. "I just hope you're not another mistake he'll have to fix." The words sank like lead in Amara's chest, but instead of responding, she simply nodded and excused herself. That night, unable to sleep, Amara wandered into the kitchen for water. From the hallway, she heard Ethan's voice, hushed, low, almost pleading. The sound came from his phone. "I told you I'll handle it," he whispered sharply. "No, not now. After the wedding." Her heart froze. She waited until silence filled the air again before stepping away, her pulse pounding so hard it hurt. In the mirror, her reflection looked foreign, the confident bride replaced by someone uncertain, afraid. The next day, the tension thickened. Ethan was distracted, jumpy, constantly checking his phone. When Amara asked what was wrong, he brushed her off with a kiss on the forehead and a half-hearted smile. "You worry too much, babe. Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. Tasha's messages became more urgent. "Mara, we need to talk. I think I found something." Amara didn't respond. She couldn't. Denial was safer than truth. She focused on final touches, smiling through fittings and vendor calls, pretending everything was normal. But that night, the night before the wedding, everything changed. As Amara sat alone in her room, her phone buzzed. One missed call, then another. "Tasha." She finally answered, her voice trembling. "What is it, Tash?" There was a pause, heavy and hesitant. Then Tasha whispered, "Mara, you need to sit down." The silence that followed felt endless before Tasha's next words came, breaking Amara's world in half. And on the night before the wedding, one phone call shattered everything. That night, The air around the countryside hotel felt still, almost sacred, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Amara had spent hours carefully wrapping a silver wristwatch for Ethan, the one he had admired months ago but never bought. She wanted to surprise him, to remind herself that love was still worth believing in. Maybe, she thought, things would fall back into place. Maybe the distance she felt was just pre-wedding nerves. So, close to midnight, she drove quietly back to the hotel where Ethan and his groomsmen were staying. The sky was clouded, and her heart beat in uneven rhythms as she walked through the dimly lit hallway, gift box in hand, whispering silent prayers for reassurance. As she reached his suite, she heard laughter. Ethan's voice, soft and intimate, not the cheerful kind she knew, but the kind that made her chest tighten. She froze. Through the thin crack of the slightly ajar door, she caught the sound of words that would burn into her forever. "We'll be together soon. I'll call off the wedding after tonight." The voice was unmistakable, Ethan's, and then came a woman's giggle, followed by a low, teasing whisper. Amara's fingers trembled so violently that her phone slipped from her grasp and hit the floor. She picked it up quickly, not realizing she had hit record when she tried to call Tasha. Every word from inside that room, every whisper, every promise, was captured. She didn't scream. She didn't burst into the room. She couldn't. Instead, she backed away slowly, her breath shallow, her legs weak beneath her. The hallway stretched endlessly before her as she sank to the floor, clutching the small gift box to her chest. Her mascara streaked her cheeks as silent tears fell, not the kind born of anger but of disbelief. How could someone she trusted so completely be capable of that kind of betrayal? For a long time she sat there, numb, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter fading behind the door. Her mind raced between denial and heartbreak, her body refusing to move. Minutes passed before the door finally opened. She lifted her head just enough to see Ethan step out, his shirt slightly unbuttoned, adjusting his tie as if nothing had happened. And behind him, the woman, tall, poised, beautifully dressed in a fitted emerald gown. She looked like she belonged to another world, polished, confident, untouched by guilt. Ethan leaned in close to whisper something, and the woman laughed softly before brushing a kiss against his cheek. Amara turned her face away, pressing her palm over her mouth to stop herself from making a sound. Her heart felt as if it had been pulled from her chest and left to bleed in silence. When the hallway was finally empty, she stood up on trembling legs and walked out of the hotel without looking back. The cold air hit her face, mixing with the taste of salt from her tears. The drive home was a blur. Headlights, empty roads, the faint hum of a song on the radio she couldn't bring herself to turn off. She parked in front of her apartment just as the first traces of dawn broke through the clouds. Her eyes were swollen, her body exhausted, but her mind was strangely calm. Too calm, almost frighteningly so. She sat there for a long time, the wedding dress hanging in the next room, untouched. Untouched, just like her heart. By morning, the recording was still on her phone, proof of everything she never wanted to believe. She could have called it off. She could have exposed him. But as the sun rose over the quiet street, Amara made a decision no one could have predicted. She would not cancel the wedding. She would go through with it. But why? Why would a woman so deeply betrayed choose to walk down that aisle anyway? Because in her heart, Amara knew. The truth would find its way out. And when it did, everyone would see Ethan Carter for who he truly was. The morning sun rose gently over the countryside, painting the fields in soft gold. But for Amara, it felt hollow, as though the light itself refused to touch her. She moved through the motions of the day in silence, her face calm, her voice steady, her eyes betraying nothing. The makeup artist complimented her skin, the hairstylist joked about wedding jitters, and Amara smiled, that same polite, practiced smile she'd worn her whole life when she needed to hide the storm inside. No one knew what had happened just hours earlier. No one saw the shattered pieces she was holding together beneath her silk robe. To the world she was a glowing bride, but in her heart, Something had already died the night before. After the stylists left, she sat alone in her room, hands trembling as she picked up her journal. For a long moment, she simply stared at the blank page before the pen began to move. "My dearest child," she wrote slowly, "if you ever doubt your worth, remember this. Truth hurts, but it also sets you free. Don't ever let someone's lies define your story. You come from a mother who learned the hard way that silence can be strength, and that sometimes love is not about holding on, but about letting go." As she wrote, her tears fell softly onto the paper, blurring her words, but she didn't stop. "I thought your father was the man I'd grow old with. Instead, he became the reason I learned how strong I truly am." When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her purse. Not for anyone else, but for her child to one day understand the truth she could no longer speak aloud. Not long after Tasha arrived, her face tight with fury and worry. "Mara, please, we can't just let him get away with this," she whispered urgently. "We can stop it right now. Call the guests, tell your mom, cancel the whole thing." But Amara's expression didn't waver. She looked at her best friend, eyes calm but resolute, and said quietly, "Not yet. He'll get his truth. In front of everyone." The conviction in her voice silenced Tasha. There was no trace of hesitation, no trembling doubt, only quiet purpose. Tasha stared at her, realizing this wasn't the voice of a broken woman. It was the voice of someone who had found clarity in the middle of pain. The minutes ticked by slowly. The sound of laughter and music floated faintly from outside as vendors prepared the venue. Somewhere beyond the walls, Ethan was greeting guests, smiling, laughing, playing his part like the charming man everyone adored. Amara fixed her veil, adjusted the lace on her gown, and caught her own reflection in the mirror. For the first time, she didn't see a victim. She saw a woman standing at the edge of her own rebirth. As the final preparations unfolded, Amara quietly excused herself. She walked down a narrow hallway to a small office near the venue's main entrance. Inside was the wedding videographer, a young man she had met only twice. He looked up, surprised to see the bride before the ceremony. "Miss Williams, is everything okay?" he asked. Amara gave him a faint smile, closing the door gently behind her. "I need your help," she said. Her voice was calm, measured, almost too calm. "I want to make a small change to the ceremony program. Something very important." The videographer hesitated, unsure of what she meant, but nodded slowly. "Of course. What kind of change?" Amara leaned closer, lowering her voice so no one outside could hear. She reached into her purse and placed her phone on the table, the same phone that had recorded Ethan's late-night confession. Her eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "Just make sure this plays right before our vows." And with that, she turned and walked away, her gown sweeping silently behind her. No one in the room, not even the man she was about to marry, could have imagined what was coming next. The day was perfect, at least on the surface. The sky was painted in soft blue, the air crisp with the scent of blooming gardenias that lined the path to the altar. Guests filled the wooden pews, their voices buzzing with laughter and small talk, unaware that beneath the beauty of the moment lay a truth waiting to detonate. Ethan Carter stood at the front of the aisle, his usual charming smile in place, shaking hands, posing for pictures, every movement rehearsed. He looked like the image of a man who had everything: love, success, admiration. To everyone watching, he was calm. To Amara, he was a stranger. Among the guests sat a woman in a pale lavender dress and oversized sunglasses, the same woman from the hotel suite. Her confidence was almost audacious, as if convinced no one would ever know. But Amara knew, and that was enough. Inside, she felt a quiet stillness. Not bitterness, not fear, just acceptance. As the music began and the guests rose, Amara appeared at the entrance. Her white gown shimmered under the sunlight, delicate and pure, But her eyes told a story of sleepless nights and silent tears. Every step she took down that aisle was heavy, not with regret, but with the weight of truth. Ethan watched her approach, smiling proudly, unaware that the woman walking toward him was no longer the same. The whispers faded, the cameras clicked, and as she reached the altar, she met his gaze, steady, unreadable. The ceremony began. The priest's voice filled the garden, warm and soothing, as he spoke of love, unity, and lifelong promises. Amara's hands trembled slightly, but her face remained composed. Ethan took her hands, leaning closer with a soft grin. "You look beautiful," he whispered. Amara smiled faintly, her heart quiet. And then, just before the words, "I do," could be spoken, Amara lifted her eyes toward the videographer, a small, almost imperceptible nod, their secret signal. The man hesitated for half a second before pressing a button on his console. Suddenly, the soft background music faded. The lights dimmed. A low static crackled through the speakers, followed by a familiar voice. Ethan's voice. "We'll be together soon. I'll call off the wedding after tonight." Every guest froze. The room, once filled with laughter, fell into stunned silence. The recording continued, word for word, capturing every whisper, every lie, every betrayal. The crowd turned their heads slowly toward Ethan, whose smile collapsed in real time. His eyes darted toward the projector, then toward Amara, then to the woman in lavender, now pale and trembling in her seat. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The mistress stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor, and without a word, she ran out of the ceremony, her heels clicking furiously against the stone path. The guests exchanged bewildered glances, some covering their mouths, others whispering her name in disbelief. Ethan tried to speak, his lips moving soundlessly as the recording ended, the last words echoing, "After tonight." The silence that followed was suffocating. Amara took a long, deliberate breath, her veil brushing against her shoulders as she stepped forward. She looked at Ethan, not with anger, but with calm resignation. Her voice was steady, clear, echoing through the stunned garden. "This was never a wedding," she said softly, pausing as her words hung in the air. "It was a farewell to the man I thought I loved, and the lies I almost married." A hush fell over the crowd. Ethan reached for her, but she stepped back. Without another word, she lowered her bouquet, let it fall to the ground, and turned away. The sound of petals scattering across the aisle was louder than any applause could ever be. Every eye followed her as she walked past the guests, head held high, tears quietly tracing her cheeks, not from pain anymore, but from release. Behind her, the whispers began, a mix of shock, pity, and admiration. Ethan stood frozen, face pale, the priest speechless, the wedding unraveling like a dream that had turned into a confession. As Amara reached the edge of the garden, she paused, glanced briefly at the open sky, and whispered under her breath, "It's over." Then she walked on, disappearing into the daylight, leaving behind gasps, stares, and a silence no one would forget. If you're still watching this far, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's following this unbelievable story. The next morning, the story broke, and it spread faster than wildfire. A guest at the wedding had filmed the entire scene, from the moment the recording played to the instant Amara dropped her bouquet and walked away. Within hours, the clip was online. The title read, "Bride exposes cheating groom at the altar. You won't believe what happens next." What began as whispers in a small Georgia town quickly became a global phenomenon. By evening, millions had seen it. News anchors discussed it. Podcasts analyzed it. Strangers debated it in comment sections. It became known everywhere as the wedding exposé. Ethan Carter's life unraveled in public view. His company suspended him first, then quietly terminated his contract after clients withdrew in embarrassment. His name became synonymous with betrayal, his once charming smile now a meme for deceit. Every corner of his reputation was stripped bare, not by revenge, but by truth. For the first time, he was forced to face what he had done, not in private whispers, but under the harsh, unrelenting light of consequence. Meanwhile, Amara's world began to shift in the opposite direction. At first, she hid, turning off her phone, avoiding the noise of the internet. But when she finally logged back in, she was met with something she hadn't expected: compassion. Hundreds, then thousands, of messages poured in from women all over the world. Messages from strangers who said, "You gave me courage," and "Thank you for reminding me that walking away isn't weakness." Her story had become more than scandal, it had become strength. In the months that followed, Amara moved back in with her mother into the quiet comfort of the home where she had once learned how to dream. Lorraine's health had worsened, but her spirit was still fierce, still proud of the daughter who refused to let betrayal define her. Together they spent long evenings on the porch, talking softly while Amara's hand rested on her growing belly. "You're stronger than you think," her mother would whisper, "and one day your child will know just how much light came from your pain." Slowly, Amara began to heal. The wedding dress, the one she could barely look at for weeks, was packed away, not as a symbol of loss, but as a reminder of survival. The letter she had written to her unborn child now sat framed on her nightstand, a quiet promise that no matter what life took from her, she would rebuild. When her baby girl Grace was born, Amara found her purpose again. The sleepless nights and soft cries reminded her that love, pure, honest love, still existed. It just came in different forms. With time, she returned to the world she had once loved, event planning. But this time, it wasn't about luxury or glamour. It was about meaning. She opened a small wedding consultancy in Savannah, fittingly named Second Chances Events. It wasn't just a business, it was a mission. She helped women plan not just weddings, but new beginnings, ceremonies that celebrated healing, truth, and courage. Her voice narrates softly, reflecting on all that had passed. "Betrayal broke me, but it also rebuilt me. Sometimes you have to lose the wrong one to find yourself again." The camera of life moves gently through moments. Amara holding Grace in her arms, helping a nervous bride adjust her veil, sharing laughter with Tasha at the new office. The once broken woman now stood taller, her eyes no longer haunted, but clear and full of peace. But that wasn't the last time Ethan would try to reach her. It was a gray afternoon in Savannah, months after the world had moved on from the wedding exposé. The headlines had faded, the gossip quieted, and Amara's life had found its rhythm again. Her little girl was crawling now, her laughter filling the small office of Second Chances Events. The scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air, and the soft hum of rain outside added a gentle calm to the day. Amara sat by the window, reviewing a client's file, when a shadow appeared beyond the glass. She looked up and froze. Ethan. He stood outside, drenched, hair plastered to his forehead, clutching something in his hand. Her old engagement ring. His eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights, regret and shame. For a moment, neither moved. Then slowly, Amara rose, stepping outside beneath the steady drizzle. The rain soaked through her blouse, but she didn't flinch. Ethan's voice broke the silence, trembling. "Amara, please. I've lost everything. I just need you to hear me. I made mistakes, terrible ones, but I never stopped loving you. I'm sorry. Please, just forgive me." She studied him quietly, her expression unreadable. There were no tears left to cry, no anger left to give, only a deep, unshakable calm. For a long time, the rain was the only sound between them. Finally she spoke, her voice soft, steady, and sure. "Forgiveness doesn't mean you're welcome back," she said gently. "It means you can't hurt me anymore." Ethan's shoulders sank, his eyes filling with the kind of realization that comes too late. Amara stepped back toward the door, pausing for only a heartbeat. Then she turned and walked inside, closing it softly behind her, leaving him standing there in the rain, a man finally facing the silence he had created. Inside, she lifted her daughter into her arms and whispered, "We're free now." Her reflection in the window showed a woman reborn, no longer broken, no longer bound by the past. She never looked back, because sometimes revenge isn't destruction, it's peace. Soft piano music drifts in, warm, tender, and full of healing. The screen fades into a sunlit garden. Balloons sway in the breeze. Amara sits beneath a canopy of soft pink ribbons, her daughter giggling in her lap. Family and friends surround them. Laughter, love, peace. No cameras, no whispers, no secrets. Just life, just truth. A year later, Amara no longer looked back on betrayal, but on how far she'd come. Love doesn't always end in fairy tales, but the truth always sets you free. A close-up of Amara kissing her daughter's forehead, smiling, not out of victory, but peace. So, tell us, was her revenge justified, or did she go too far? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget to subscribe. More powerful, life-changing stories are coming your way.